You really have to hear what this wildlife survey team encountered in the Shawnee Hills in October of 2011. Four people drove into the Garden of the Gods Wilderness section of Shawnee National Forest on the morning of October 14th. 3 came out. One of those 3 has not slept through a full night since. The fourth, a man named Owen Tate, 44 years old, 19 years working those trails, was never recovered. The official Illinois Department of Natural Resources incident report, filed 5 days after the team evacuated, lists the cause of death as an accidental fall from the Anvil Rock sandstone formation. That explanation requires you to believe several things simultaneously. It requires you to believe that a man with 19 years of trail experience fell from a formation he had crossed dozens of times. It requires you to believe that his body fell somewhere so inaccessible that a 6-day search involving 2 DNR teams and a helicopter found nothing. And it requires you to believe that before he fell, Owen Tate stopped, removed both of his boots, placed them side by side on a flat sandstone rock 30 meters from the nearest trail, tied the laces, and then walked away in his socks into terrain where no footprints were ever found. What comes next is the account. My name is Deborah Crane. I am 52 years old. I spent 24 years as a wildlife biologist with the Illinois Department of Natural Resources, and for most of that time, the Shawnee National Forest was my primary field territory. I know that forest the way you know a house you grew up in, the way the light falls in different seasons, the way the creek levels change, the animal corridors, the pressure systems that move through the hollows before a weather change. I grew up in Elizabethtown, 12 miles from the forest's eastern edge. My father took me into the Shawnee when I was 7 years old. I have been going back ever since. Before October of 2011, I had logged more than 300 field days in that forest across my career. I had tracked coyote populations in winter. I had done night surveys in terrain most people would not enter in daylight. I have come face to face with black bears in close quarters and handled the situation without incident. I tell you this not to establish credentials, but to make clear what I mean when I say this. Nothing had ever frightened me. That changed at Garden of the Gods. 2 weeks before we drove into that section of forest, a man named Raymond Meshigaud called the DNR regional office in Benton. He identified himself as a Kickapoo elder, and he asked, by name, which section of the Shawnee the upcoming Deer Corridor survey team would be entering. The receptionist, uncertain how to handle the call, passed it to my supervisor. My supervisor noted it in the call log and did not tell me about it until after Owen was gone. The survey's official purpose was white-tailed deer population corridor mapping in the Garden of the Gods Wilderness area, a section of the forest that most visitors access as a hiking destination, never staying past dark. We were there to work. We had permits, equipment, a 4-day schedule, and a base campsite pre-selected from aerial survey data. We had every reason to expect a standard field operation. Marcus Holt was 38 years old and had 11 years with the DNR as a field technician. He was the kind of person you want on a remote operation, methodical, unshakable, good at staying focused when conditions deteriorated. He had worked with me on 6 previous surveys, and we had a functional shorthand that made the fieldwork efficient. Marcus did not speculate. He observed, recorded, and reported. That was his value and his character. Jana Reese was 29, a graduate researcher from the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign, finishing her doctoral work on ungulate population dynamics in fragmented forest systems. She was on her first major independent fieldwork placement. She was sharp in a way that was immediately apparent. She asked precise questions, she noticed details quickly, and she was eager in a way that was not recklessness, but genuine intellectual energy. She deserved a different first assignment. Owen Tate had been working Shawnee National Forest trail crew and survey support since 1993. 19 years. He knew the terrain of the southern Illinois hill country the way a surgeon knows anatomy, not just the surface but the systems underneath. He could read creek flood history from the silt lines on canyon walls. He could tell you which cave systems connected by the way cold air moved across the forest floor in still weather. He was not a scientist, but he was, in the truest sense, a naturalist. We loaded the truck at the Pounds Hollow trailhead at 7:40 in the morning. Owen drove. He knew the access roads without looking at the map. When we turned onto the gravel track that leads toward the Garden of the Gods interior, He slowed the truck and looked at the tree line for a moment without saying anything. Then he said that he avoided the sandstone ridge above Beaver Creek after dark. He said it the way you mention a road that floods in heavy rain, practical, matter-of-fact, not something requiring explanation. Nobody asked him to explain. We had equipment to unload. I have thought about that moment many times in the years since. He was not being dramatic. He was telling us something true in the only way he knew how to say it. Plainly, without a framework for making it larger than a sentence. The Garden of the Gods Wilderness area sits in the northeastern section of the Shawnee National Forest in Saline County, Illinois. It is named for its sandstone formations, the Anvil Rock, the Camel Rock, the formations along the observation trail that rise above the forest canopy and give long sightlines north toward the Ohio River Valley. Most visitors see those formations and nothing else. They take photographs and drive home before dinner. What the photographs do not capture is the terrain behind the formations, the canyon systems, the hollow networks, the cave-pocked bluffs above Pounds Hollow that descend into a creek drainage accessible only on foot. Cellular signal ends at the half-mile mark on the access trail. The nearest paved road is 6.2 miles from where we set base camp. The nearest hospital, Harrisburg Medical Center, is 34 miles from the trailhead. In an emergency with a litter carry through that terrain, you are looking at 3 hours minimum before any medical intervention is possible. Sound behaves unusually in the canyon sections. The sandstone walls create reflection patterns that distort distance and direction. You can hear a human voice from 400 meters and believe it is coming from 10 meters away. You can hear nothing from 50 meters when the wind is moving through the upper canopy. This is relevant to what Marcus reported on the first night. On previous surveys, I had noted a recurring feature in certain sections of the forest floor in the Garden of the Gods interior, areas where undergrowth was completely absent. Not thinned by shade or soil composition, but absent, no fern, no moss, no fallen leaf debris, no surface fungi, nothing growing from bare earth in shapes that were roughly circular, ranging from 4 to 12 meters in diameter. I had logged these in my field notes as anomalous ground cover voids, without a satisfactory explanation. I had assumed, without real evidence, a soil chemistry cause. Those field notes, 5 surveys worth of observations in that specific section, were removed from the DNR archive sometime between December 2011 and March 2012. When I requested them through an internal records inquiry, I was told they could not be located. The first day of the survey went without incident. Deer sign was present and consistent with population modeling projections. Marcus set up the acoustic monitoring array, 4 directional microphones positioned to capture mammal movement in the survey corridor, and the equipment ran clean through the afternoon. Jana cataloged browse patterns along the creek drainage with focus and efficiency. Owen ran the camp and kept the access paths clear. By dusk, we had a full day's data and a clean base camp and no reason to feel anything other than professionally satisfied. The acoustic monitors flagged an anomaly at 11:17 that night. Marcus was the first to notice it. He was doing a routine data review before sleep and called me over to look at the monitor display. The equipment was recording a rhythmic low-frequency vibration, not a sound in the range of human hearing, but a structured pattern showing on the waveform display, spaced at consistent intervals of approximately 8 seconds. Repeating, not matching any vocalization in the reference library the equipment carried, which included every documented large mammal in Illinois and most of the regional bird species with infrasound signatures. Not wind interference, which produces irregular patterns. Not mechanical vibration from distant traffic, which the canyon walls would absorb. A deliberate, repeating, structured signal. Jana suggested a geological cause, fault microactivity, subsurface water movement. It was a reasonable hypothesis. Marcus said the waveform pattern was too regular for geological origin. We discussed it for perhaps 10 minutes. The pattern stopped at the exact moment Owen said, aloud, that he wanted to break camp in the morning and leave. Not wind down the survey and file a schedule change. Leave. In the morning. He gave no reason. He put his coffee down, set it quietly, and went into his tent. The acoustic monitors recorded silence from that point until dawn. I did not sleep that night. I told myself it was the coffee. I became fully awake at 2:40 in the morning. Not gradually, the way you surface from deep sleep, but completely and immediately, the way your nervous system can pull you from unconsciousness when something changes in the environment before your conscious mind has processed what the change is. The forest was silent. I want to be precise about what I mean because there is a normal nighttime quiet in deep forest that is simply reduced activity, insects at lower frequency, owls moving, the occasional small mammal in the leaf cover. This was not that. This was an absolute absence of biological sound. No insect frequency. No movement in the canopy. No creek sound, though the drainage was 40 meters from camp and had been audible all evening. A pressurized silence, the kind that feels like something has displaced every living thing from the surrounding area. I looked through the tent mesh toward the camp perimeter. The camp light, a low-lumen lantern on a center post, was still burning, illuminating perhaps 8 meters of the clearing. At the far edge of that light, where the tree line began, there was a shape standing in the shadow margin. It was not moving. It was not retreating. It was present in the way a post is present, with absolute stillness that read, even at that distance, as deliberate. I estimated its height at between 7 and 8 feet based on its position relative to the lower branch line of the nearest oak. It had a vertical profile. It was standing upright. I woke Marcus. I told him to look toward the eastern tree line without turning on his light. He looked. He was quiet for 4 seconds. Then he said quietly that it was gone. I had not seen it move. I had not looked away. It was present and then it was not present, with no interval of movement between those two states. The acoustic monitors recorded nothing during the window between 2:30 and 3:15 that morning. No waveform, no vibration, no frequency of any kind. In a living forest, that is not a possible recording. Some biological signal is always present. The monitors were functioning. They recorded normally again from 3:16 onward. What was in the camp clearing that night produced no acoustic signature. That is the detail I have never been able to file into any category that makes sense. The second day, Jana went up the bluff face above camp to take browsing height measurements on the hardwood canopy edge. She was gone for 2 hours. When she came back down, she was quieter than her baseline, and she asked me to come up and look at something before we logged it. The sandstone overhang she had found was perhaps 60 meters above the camp clearing, set into the bluff face at a point where the rock surface was partially sheltered from weather. Cut into the stone at approximately chest height was a series of geometric notches, not pictographs in the sense of representational images, but repeated angular cuts made at consistent intervals, running in a horizontal line across approximately 4 meters of rock face. The cuts were made by a tool or a claw capable of removing sandstone cleanly. Some appeared, by the weathering of their edges, to be very old, decades, possibly longer. Some appeared recent. The sandstone dust inside 2 of the cuts was still pale and barely oxidized. Jana photographed the markings with her field camera. When she reviewed her camera's memory card 3 days later, after the evacuation, those images were not there. The photographs taken before and after that location were intact. Only those images were gone. Owen identified the location when I described it to him that afternoon. He went still in the way that people go still when something they already knew is confirmed rather than revealed. He said he had seen those marks before, on his first summer in the Shawnee in 1993, when a trail crew member who had worked the Garden of the Gods section for 11 years told him the marks were boundary warnings. That the land past that point belonged to something that had been in the Shawnee Hills before any settlement, before any road, before any recorded human presence in the region. The trail crew member had not been joking. Owen had understood that then, and he had stayed on the right side of those marks for 19 years. He had not told us where exactly we had set our base camp relative to those marks. That night, at a time Jana later estimated as somewhere between 1 o'clock and 2 o'clock in the morning, she heard her name spoken outside her tent. Not called, spoken. At a conversational volume, with precision, the way you say someone's name when you are standing next to them and want their attention. She said it was not Marcus's voice. It was not Owen's voice. She did not unzip the tent. She lay still until light. She told me this the following morning while Marcus was running equipment checks. Her hands were steady. She was not prone to dramatics. She said it the way you report a data point that does not fit your model carefully, with full awareness that it changes something. Owen was not in camp at 5:15 in the morning on October 17th. His sleeping bag was inside his tent. His jacket was on the tent peg. His field boots were not at the tent entrance. We assumed, for the first 20 minutes, that he had gone to the creek for water or to check the FAR monitoring station. Marcus went to the monitoring station. Owen was not there. I went to the creek. Owen was not there. We found his boots at 6:40, after 90 minutes of searching. They were on a flat sandstone rock above the main Pound's hollow drainage, 30 meters from the nearest maintained trail. Placed side by side, laces tied. The rock surface around them was undisturbed. The leaf cover between the trail and the rock showed no compression, no drag, no footprint pattern consistent with a person walking to that location. The leaf cover beyond the rock, in every direction, including down toward the creek, was equally undisturbed. Marcus went up the bluff above the hollow to get a sight line across the drainage. He was gone for 11 minutes. When he came back, his face was the color of concrete and he would not stop moving. He kept walking the perimeter of the camp, checking the equipment, picking things up and setting them down. He told me, and he said this once and did not repeat it, that something had been moving along the ridgeline parallel to his position as he climbed the bluff. That it matched his pace exactly. When he moved, it moved. When he stopped, it stopped. That it was walking upright. That when he turned to face the ridgeline directly, it was gone. Jana had not left camp. When Marcus and I returned from the search, she was sitting in the center of the clearing with her field notebook open on her knees. The notebook was open to a blank page. She had written nothing. She had no memory of the period between 4 o'clock and 7 o'clock that morning. Not fragmented memory, no memory. When I asked her what she had been doing, she looked at the blank notebook page and said she did not know. A physician at Harrisburg Medical Center, who examined Jana after the evacuation, found no neurological explanation for the memory gap. Her blood work was clean. Her vitals were normal. He noted in his examination record that her cortisol levels were among the highest he had measured in a patient who had not experienced physical trauma. He did not include a diagnosis. The examination record listed the cause as unknown. We packed what we could carry and we left. We left the monitoring equipment. We left most of the survey data. We left Owen's jacket on the tent peg because none of us could bring ourselves to take it down. The DNR incident report for the October 2011 Garden of the Gods survey was filed on October 19th, 48 hours after our evacuation. I did not write it. My supervisor filed it based on the verbal briefing I gave on the afternoon of October 17th, a briefing during which I was, by any clinical measure, in shock. The report lists Owen Tate's cause of death as accidental fall, Anvil Rock formation. It lists the incident date as October 17, 2011. It notes that recovery of remains was not possible due to terrain inaccessibility. Owen's body was never recovered. The Saline County Coroner's Office has no record of receiving remains or conducting an examination in connection with this case. The death certificate, which I obtained through a records request in 2013, was issued based solely on the DNR incident report, with no physical evidence of death and no medical examiner involvement. The cause of death listed on that certificate is accidental fall. I submitted a supplementary report to the DNR regional office in November 2011. It was 12 pages. It included the acoustic monitoring anomaly data, the waveform records, the description of the sandstone markings, the circumstances of Owen's disappearance, Marcus's account of the ridgeline figure, and Jana's documented memory gap with the attached physician's examination record. I have the submission confirmation. The supplementary report does not appear anywhere in the publicly accessible DNR archive. A records request filed in 2014 returned a response stating that no supplementary documentation existed for this incident. 2 weeks after the evacuation, I received a voicemail from Raymond Meshigod. I had not contacted him. I do not know how he obtained my direct number. He did not ask about Owen. He did not ask about the survey. He said in full, "He went past the marks. I tried to warn you before you left." The call log on my phone shows the call lasted 14 seconds. I have listened to that voicemail more times than I can count. He did not sound surprised. He sounded like a man reporting a result he had already known was likely. After the incident, I spent 2 years researching the history of the Garden of the Gods section specifically, not the broader Shawnee National Forest, but that 2-square-mile area above Pounds Hollow and the Beaver Creek drainage. What I found was not a gap in the record. It was a pattern in the record. Between 1949 and 2009, 7 individuals disappeared in that specific section of the forest without recovery of remains. 7 cases across 60 years. 4 of those 7 were officially classified as accidental deaths despite the absence of physical evidence to support that classification. 1 was listed as a voluntary disappearance, a missing persons case closed on the assumption that the individual left voluntarily, despite the fact that the individual's vehicle, identification, and personal property were all found at the trailhead. 2 cases remain technically open as missing persons investigations. The files now so old they exist only in physical form in the Saline County Sheriff's Archive. The pattern is consistent. All 7 cases occurred in the same season, late October through mid-November. All 7 involved individuals who were, by background and experience, comfortable in wilderness terrain. None of the 7 involved groups. Each was either alone or separated from companions at the time of disappearance. Owen Tate made 8. In 1973, an internal U.S. Forest Service memorandum, which I located in a physical records collection at the Shawnee National Forest Supervisor's office during a research visit, referenced repeated unauthorized presence reports in the Pounds Hollow area, recommending that the section be evaluated for undocumented wildlife activity. That language, unauthorized presence, undocumented wildlife, appears nowhere else in Forest Service documentation from that period that I have been able to find. The memo was initialed by a district ranger whose personnel file shows he transferred out of the Shawnee district 2 months after the memo was written. He did not request the transfer. It was administrative. I drove to Danville, Illinois in March of 2012 to meet Raymond Meshigod in person. He was 79 years old. He met me at a diner on the north side of town, arrived on time, ordered coffee, and listened without interruption while I told him everything that had happened. When I finished, he was quiet for a moment, and then he told me what he knew. The entity has a name in the Kickapoo language. He said it carefully and asked me to write it, Makwakaishkwia. He translated it as the one that measures the living. He said the translation was approximate, that the word carried meanings that did not have English equivalents, something closer to the one that takes account of what is living and decides. He said it does not hunt randomly. It watches. It observes groups and individuals over a period of time before it acts. It has territorial boundaries that it enforces, boundaries that are physically marked, as they have been marked for as long as the Kickapoo have known the Shawnee Hills, and crossing those boundaries is understood in the traditional knowledge as an irrevocable act. Not a provocation, a conclusion. Once the line is crossed, the accounting is complete. He said it selects. He could not explain the selection criteria beyond saying that it does not take everyone who crosses. It takes who it chooses, and it has been choosing in the Shawnee Hills since before his grandfather's grandfather's time. He said the sandstone marks were not made by human hands. He said he had called the DNR office because someone had told him. He did not say who, that a team was going into that section in October. He had wanted to warn us before we went in. The warning was not passed to me. He drank his coffee and looked out the window for a moment. Then he said that Makwakaishkwia had been in the Shawnee Hills before the first Kickapoo came to that land, and it would still be in the Shawnee Hills after every person alive today had died, and that the most important thing anyone could understand about it was that it did not share our relationship to time. What we experience as ancient, it experiences as recent. He did not seem frightened. He seemed like a man who had long ago made his peace with a truth that most people are not equipped to hold. ## Chapter 12. What you should know before you go. Shawnee National Forest is open to the public today. The Garden of the Gods Wilderness area is one of its most visited sections, drawing hikers from across the Midwest every spring and fall. The observation trail runs past the Anvil Rock formation and offers some of the most visually striking sandstone scenery in the American Midwest. Most people who hike it leave with nothing more than photographs and a good afternoon of exercise. Most people. If you go, And I am not telling you not to go because most people who walk that trail will return home with nothing more unusual than sore legs. Stay on the marked trail system. Past the second creek crossing after Anvil Rock, where the trail curves south toward the Pounds Hollow overlook, there is a section of ground above the main drainage where the undergrowth disappears. The forest floor goes bare. You will know it by the stillness. Not the stillness of a clearing, but a stillness that seems directed, the way a room feels when someone in it has gone silent specifically because you entered. Do not go past that point after 4 o'clock in the afternoon in October or November. Do not go off-trail into the bluff section above the drainage. Do not go alone. I am not certain that any of this will protect you. Raymond Meshigod told me that Makwakaishkwia selects, and that the selection is not random, and that the marks are a boundary but not a guarantee. He told me this with the careful honesty of someone who does not believe in offering comfort that is not true. I survived because I was not the one it had already chosen by the time I saw it at the tree line. I know this because of what was left behind: Owen's boots, placed with a precision and a deliberateness that no accidental fall produces, and because of what Raymond Meshigod said when I asked him directly why I had come home. He said, "It was not finished with you yet. That is the part that keeps me awake at night." #shorts. Short 1. The boots. Hook. His boots were found side by side on a sandstone rock. Laces tied. No footprints leading to them. No footprints leading away. Owen Tate had worked the Shawnee National Forest trail system for 19 years. He knew that terrain the way most people know their own neighborhood. On the morning of October 17, 2011, he was gone from camp before first light. 90 minutes of searching. Then the boots, placed on a flat rock above Pounds Hollow with the precision of someone who set them down slowly and deliberately. Both boots, laces tied, the sandstone around them completely undisturbed. The leaf cover between the trail and the rock showed no compression, no path, no indication that a person had walked to that location. Owen was not a man who panicked. Owen was not a man who made careless errors in terrain he had crossed hundreds of times. The DNR incident report lists his death as an accidental fall from a rock formation 300 meters from where those boots were found. No remains were ever recovered. The coroner's office has no record of this case. The boots were the only evidence. And the boots said something the official report refused to hear. What the survey team experienced in the nights before Owen disappeared was removed from the official record. The complete account is below. Short 2. The marks in the stone. Hook. The cuts in the sandstone were not pictographs. They were not ancient art. A Kickapoo elder said they were not made by human hands. A graduate researcher named Jana Reese found them on the second afternoon. A line of geometric notches cut into a sheltered sandstone overhangs 60 meters above base camp. Some were weathered to the smoothness of old cuts. 2 of them had pale, barely oxidized dust in the grooves, as though they had been made recently. She photographed them with a field camera. When she reviewed the memory card 3 days later, those images were gone. The photographs taken immediately before and after were intact. A wildlife biologist with 24 years in the Shawnee said she had noted bare circular patches in that section of forest on previous surveys, areas where nothing grew, no moss, no undergrowth, nothing, and had filed them in her field notes. Those field notes were removed from the DNR archive. The trail crew worker who first told Owen Tate about the marks in 1993 said, "The land past that point belonged to something that had been in the Shawnee Hills before any human settlement in the region." He said that plainly. He was not being dramatic. Owen understood then, and he stayed on the right side of those marks for 19 years. The marks had moved. What the Kickapoo elder told the biologist about what those marks mean, and who made them, is part of the full account below. Short 3. IT stood at the tree line. Hook. She woke at 2:40 in the morning and the forest was completely silent. Not quiet, silent, and something was standing at the edge of the light. Wildlife biologist Deborah Crane had spent more than 300 days in the Shawnee National Forest across her career. She described what she saw at the camp perimeter that night with the precision she applied to everything, between 7 and 8 feet tall, based on its height relative to the lower branch line of the nearest oak. Standing upright, not moving, not retreating, just present, with a stillness she described as deliberate. She woke her colleague Marcus. He looked toward the tree line. For seconds of silence. Then he said it was gone. She had not looked away. She had not blinked. There was no interval of movement between its presence and its absence. The acoustic monitoring equipment, 4 directional microphones recording continuously through the night, captured no waveform, no vibration, no frequency of any kind during the window between 2:30 and 3:15 that morning. In a living forest, that recording is not possible. Some biological signal is always present. Whatever stood at that tree line produced no sound. Not a reduced sound signature. No sound at all. What happened on the third night, and what the field technician saw moving along the ridgeline, is part of the full account below. Short 4. Makwkia. Hook. The Kickapoo elder said it has a name. He said it does not hunt randomly. He said once the line is crossed, the outcome is already decided. Raymond Meshigod was 79 years old when he sat across from Deborah Crane in a diner in Danville, Illinois, in March of 2012. He had already known what had happened in the Shawnee Hills that October. He had tried to call the DNR office before the team went in. The warning was never passed along. He told her the name, Makwakaishkwia. He translated it as the one that measures the living. He said the translation was approximate. The full meaning was closer to something that takes account of what is living and decides. He said it has been in the Shawnee Hills since before the first Kickapoo came to that land. He said the sandstone boundary marks were not made by human hands. He said it watches before it acts, selects. The selection is not random. He said Owen Tate crossed the boundary marks on the first afternoon. From that point, the outcome was fixed. When Deborah asked him why she had come home, he answered without hesitation. He said it was not finished with her yet. She has checked her locks 3 times before sleeping every night since October 2011. The full account of what the survey team encountered, and what has been disappearing from that section of the Shawnee Hills since 1949, is documented below.